What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Macro Mondays, the #1 show in cryptocurrency. I believe I'm joined alongside VEMP Studio CEO Dominic Ryder. Dominic, some crazy news just broke about 20 minutes ago here today. We're going to talk about that. But first off, let me just ask you, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How's everything going over there in London, bruv?
How's my weekend? My weekend was all right. My wife was in Paris with my mother-in-law.
Nice.
So yeah, nice and quiet. Managed to just relax, assess the markets, do a bit of crypto trading, and catch up on some TV. So managed to relax. What about you?
Yeah, I had a really, really nice and relaxing weekend as well. What are you watching on TV right now?
I'm watching a hell of a lot of documentaries.
Me too.
And I've got a couple of books that I've just ordered as well.
Nice. Yeah, I was watching the Waco one on Netflix. They just dropped like a new Waco.
Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah.
What I don't like about the latest one, I've watched one which is much better because they've already missed out in this new one a few key aspects, which is on the side of the actual cult, which religious group, whatever you want to call it. For one, they completely glossed over the fact that the media was invited there because the whole thing was supposed to be like, look how good we are.
Yeah.
So Waco actually came after another monumental screw up by the FBI and the ATP, which was the Ruby Ridge incident.
Yes, I've heard of this.
And they they tried to take out this guy. The police did, and then the guy wasn't having it. He killed a couple of ATP officers, and then they had another lock-in. And they went to take out the guy, FBI sniper, and they killed his wife, missed him. The FBI shot his wife, and then basically he got off completely. So the FBI and the ATP decided we need to have basically a PR stunt, like, look how good we are, look how efficient we are. So they invited all the media along to the Waco Siege. And in fact, one of the media was the one who asked a cult member for directions, which tipped them off they were coming. They got told that they know we're coming, and they still went through with it anyway, knowing that they were absolutely armed to the teeth. So yeah, I won't ruin it for anyone, but they've missed out a couple of key parts like that already. So I'm not sure. They seem to be dressing up David Koresh, the cult leader, as having a god complex. The way that they ended the first episode, I didn't like, because in reality, he was like a weirdo. Don't get me wrong. Like most religious nuts are, in my opinion. Obviously, religious nuts, not all people. But yeah, they're dressing him up like he was a weirdo, and he was definitely like a nonce. But they're going away from the fact that they were on his land and that they were going there with the intention of making it a media thing. So yeah, I did watch an episode of that too.
Crazy. Yeah, it's a wild story. I wasn't alive for that, but I'm sure it was a spectacle. Welcome everybody here, guys. Already 43 people are tuned in. May you be well. That guy, Philip, Coffee and Crypto, Vep to God, my guy, Bell Smash, Cachet Cats. Juan has a good question here. Let's ask this in a second. Crypto Mom is here, as well as May you be well. Dom, is XRP Pump a buy the rumors of the news event, or is this never coming back down? Real quick, what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll get into the show, because I am very, very bullish on XRP. Obviously, their court case with the SEC is still ongoing. The current price of XRP, ladies and gentlemen, is 46 cents. I mean, what do you think about this question here from May You Be Well?
I made some money on shorting it this morning, actually. But it had a nice little pump up, and whenever I think we're at a decent level to sell, and if Bitcoin isn't looking like too attractive, like for example, right now, Bitcoin's already dumped. So it's currently on a dead cat bounce. So I'm taking some of my hedges off.
Nice.
But XRP had pumped up again, and it's still like the only one still up on the day, and it's faring quite well. It's up 3.5% at the moment, but I shorted it when it hit this double top on the 22nd. It got to 49, and then I sold it about 4.8, and then I took some risk off.
Smart man, always killing it. And Webby says, favorite show on Monday, Jake, Dom, and the Wolfman. What's up, Webby? How you doing, brother?
Webby followed me, actually. I remember
Webby.
I see that PFP before. I mean, yeah, right now, actually, if Bitcoin does bounce here, it's pretty decent level. It's pulled back to a decent line of support. It's just whether Bitcoin does. I mean, Bitcoin seems to be bouncing harder than it was bouncing. I don't know if maybe CZ had tweeted something that beyond just tweeting the number 4.
Yeah, let's get into that because people are probably wondering right now. So this just broke. Let's see, earlier today, guys, and you guys saw the title of the thumbnail. Binance and CEO CZ Binance sued by U.S. CFTC over alleged regulatory violations, and they have more info here. The CFTC lawsuit alleges Binance traded on their own platform with 300 accounts directly or indirectly associated with CEO CZ. So Binance proprietary trading activity on Binance 69. During the relevant period, Binance has traded on its own platform through approximately 300 quote-unquote house accounts that are all directly or indirectly owned by Zao, as well as owned by Merit Peak and Sigma Chain. Zao has also traded on the Binance platform through 2 individual accounts at various times during the relevant period. Merit Peak has entered into OTC transactions with Binance customers and settled such trades by depositing, and it continues on with another article here. Watcher Guru always breaking it. I haven't read this yet. Let's go ahead and see what it says. So the CFTC lawsuit alleges 300 Binance accounts associated with its CEO were exempt from the company's insider trading policy. So they go on to say, Binance does not disclose to its customers that Binance is trading in its own markets in its terms of use or elsewhere. Consistent with its apparent attempt to keep its proprietary trading activity on its own markets top secret, Binance has refused to respond to commission-issued investigative subpoenas seeking information concerning its proprietary trading activity on Binance, including transaction data and communications among the members of the Binance Quant Desk. On information and belief, Binance has not subjected the trading activity of Merit Peak, Sigma Chain, or its approximately 300 house accounts to any anti-fraud or anti-manipulation surveillance or controls, and to the extent Binance purports to have required its officers, employees, and agents to abide by a relatively new insider trading policy, Binance's approximately 300 house accounts are exempt from that policy. This is breaking news here, Dom. That's the most recent tweet from Watcher Guru. Not good for the crypto space. And as you mentioned, CZ Binance just tweeted the number 4. That's all he said was number 4, right?
Yeah, that's a huge red flag, to be honest. Like, if you just got done by the Securities Exchange Commission, you guys just got charged, not just the exchange, but you personally. Look how Coinbase handled it, and look at their statements and the way that they addressed it. Bear in mind, this didn't come out of the blue for Binance. Like, they would have had time to prepare a statement. They would have been subpoenaed. They would have known it's coming. You don't just tweet like 4. It's like, how obvious can you be that you have no leg to stand on? If you're legitimate, then you argue your case. You don't just tweet like 4. That's the sort of thing that Justin Sun does, and Justin Sun is a known criminal. Like, tons of agencies are after him for this very reason, and he does shit like that. Like, if you have a legitimate leg to stand on, then you put out, or if you're even a professional exchange, put out a statement. Prove you're legitimate. Like, how stupid does that make crypto as a industry look? Or what's your response to getting done by the US regulator?
I will say this. I don't agree that this means he's guilty at all just by putting out the number 4, because there has been so much FUD against him, right? Like, and every time he answers this, and he's dispelled a lot, but I agree, you would want something a little bit more professional, like Brian Armstrong, how Brian Armstrong came out and was like, look, we're going to fight this. We're going to take the fight to them. We've been working with them. Here's our facts. Here's how many meetings we've had. Like, he put out a professional statement. Just putting out the number 4, I agree with you 100%. It's just like, it's not that professional. Has Binance put out anything is the question. No, nothing from the Binance exchange as well. What's your take, though? You've been right 98% of the time on the show. You've been in the crypto space for quite some time. You've worked with exchanges. You've seen how different exchanges have interacted. Do you think that CZ Binance has done anything criminal in his past?
I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow, but I mean, criminal, it depends. If criminal means like with intent, not sure, but in terms of criminals and broken laws, like almost certainly, people seem to have this idea that when people say that there's like money laundering in crypto, people think, oh no, that's a lie, that's not true, or that's just a stereotype. In reality, it's not just a stereotype. So before Signature and Silvergate were shut down, they processed something like 750 billion of volume, so almost $1 trillion of volume between those two little regional banks, and that came to 0.8% of worldwide currency transactions. So how do two tiny little regional banks in the US manage to do almost 1% of global currency transactions? Well, it'd probably be if you're trying to evade sanctions, because those people have no choice. It's like you don't have two tiny little banks out of the US processing that amount of volume of the global money supply and doing something legitimate. Like, people are going to them because they know full well that if they process that through crypto, they can get around it or get away with it. And that's why they can charge these fees and why they attract it, because they are offering something where it can't be tracked as easily. Like, people aren't just going with them because they think, oh yeah, they're great banks. Like, if you want to get the cheapest fees and if you want to deal with like the big boys, with your corporate, you go to JP Morgan, you go to Goldman Sachs. If you're having to take your business to two tiny little regional banks and process millions and millions, it is highly likely you're doing that because you've been rejected from one of the bigger ones that are cheaper, or you're doing something criminal. And to think that they can process that amount of transaction volume on a global stage, two tiny little banks, and have those squeaky clean, no way in hell. Yeah. Almost certainly they are. They're not doing their due diligence on money laundering and reporting, and a lot of that money will be going through shells and through Caymans and through like BVI and then through North Korea, Iran, and it's just, people don't accept it. People just think that it doesn't happen, but it's not like a decentralized exchange. Like, these payment networks that they transact on are still like backdoor. And yeah, a lot of it has been. I'm conscious we skipped over the global reserve currency question about the US dollar. People have been saying that for 50 years about US dollar losing its value and losing its standard as the global reserve currency. And it hasn't happened so far. However, the steps are being undertaken. What you need to remember, and the reason why it will now accelerate, is that the dollar was finally weaponized. There's been a lot of arguments about the dollar being weaponized by the US before, by making the dollar so strong against other countries that like they have to pay extra, but it was weaponized in the fact that the actual clearing houses that process payments were stopped from doing transactions with Russia. So after in the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was after the Second World War, where the US dollar became the global reserve currency, they also set up the IMF and they set up the World Bank. And those were supposed to be independent. However, they froze the assets of Russia against all international law, no precedent for it whatsoever. And you've got to imagine what China and Saudi Arabia and every developed nation thought when they saw that. They thought, so the US can just freeze my assets just like that. And so that was the biggest mistake from the US, because why the hell would they take that chance? They wouldn't. And that's why Russia, BRICS, all of these countries, Saudi Arabia, are now looking to settle in other currencies, because they just can't have exposure to the dollar anymore. It was Henry Kissinger who made the deal with the Saudis ages and ages ago to make the petrodollar. But yeah, it was the biggest mistake, was weaponizing the dollar, because now nobody's going to want the dollar. Because why would you? If China's like second largest economy in the world, main adversary of the US, and you weaponize the dollar, if the second largest economy in the world is thinking, well, I'm not going to touch the dollar if you're going to stop me using it, like it's obviously going to lose its status. And that's exactly what's happened. And it's all the fault of the US for weaponizing it against Russia. Of course, people are going to look to get rid of it now because they don't want that to happen to them.
Yeah. You know, and this is a good point too. So I don't know if you saw this, but the president of Kenya tells citizens to get rid of the US dollar. And in this video, he's talking about how you need to get rid of it. It's going to go to zero. He's like, anybody in finance needs to get rid of the dollar. Look, the dollar right now is would you consider it the world's currency right now? The dollar? It's the world's currency.
Officially, it is the world's reserve currency.
And do you think, and this is just kind of a blanket statement, but you know, we've talked about this when I was in London, you talked about how pretty much, and I think we're going to talk about this more on the stream, how every empire has fallen, and pretty much, right, every single currency has went to zero. I mean, I don't really know what currency the Romans used back in the day, but when I went to Rome, I was fascinated by how big it was, how powerful these people were, and how this empire fell, right? So all empires do eventually fall. Do you think that the US dollar, and we saw it happen in Venezuela, we've seen it, you know, it's really bad in Brazil. Do you ever think that the US dollar will be worth nothing?
I mean, inevitable, like every single currency currently in existence
Fails.
Like all fiat has gone to zero. Every single time. Roman Empire, perfect example.
Yeah.
They started with a silver standard. Every single coin was pure silver. By the end of the Roman Empire, the denarius, which was the currency they used, became copper and silver plated. But back then, obviously, people didn't know. So it was only after it started rubbing off that people realized that they'd been done. They didn't realize that fiat was fiat. But you have, I've been looking into this a lot more recently. So the 6 ages that define the lifespan of an empire: age of pioneers, age of conquests, age of commerce, age of affluence, age of intellect, and the final one, which is what we are in right now, is the age of decadence. And the common features of every age of decadence is undisciplined and overextended military, US all over, literally invading everyone for the past like 30 years, ever since Vietnam, going into resource, having people stationed, like in Syria, like everyone's saying, oh, Iran is firing missiles at US bases in Syria. The US is not supposed to be there. It's against international law that they have bases there. They're only there to protect the oil. Donald Trump actually admitted that. That's illegal. They shouldn't be in Syria. It doesn't mean that they deserve to get missiles chucked at them, but at the same time, it's an overextended military. Conspicuous displays of wealth and extravagance, which is just everywhere in society now. Massive disparity between rich and poor.
Everywhere.
Again, everywhere. An obsession with sex. That's something very much in the last 20 years in particular.
Everywhere.
Right weird. And the key aspect, which every single one in history has shared, debasement of the currency. And that is where they no longer have a currency that's backed, because the people that own the printing press, the one who print the money, they just can't get enough. And it's just wealth and power. And at the breakdown of society, it becomes that the elites of society just steal as much as possible because they know the time is like done. And you have what you have now, which is a huge increase in entertainment. So at the end of the Roman Empire, you had the real big rise of all of the gladiator pits to give basically the common people like an outlet, like a distraction.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, the one celebrity like distraction that has been shared over every collapsed empire at the very end is that the society makes celebrities of its chefs.
Say that again? They make them chefs?
No, they make celebrities of their chefs, as in, you know, chefs in a restaurant. Think about name me a celebrity chef from over 20 years ago.
All I can think of, and I don't know if it's 20 years, Gordon Ramsay, but is that over 20 years ago?
That's like starting around that time. But it's true that you don't, celebrity chefs, so it's all about this age of decadence where everybody has like so much and everybody wants so much and everyone is seeking pleasure, which is again like obsession with sex, obsession with pleasure, and just general like degeneracy of society where everybody is so pessimistic about the future because they know like this, everyone can see it, they just might not acknowledge it. And so you have like in the Ottoman Empire, the Spanish and the Roman Empire at the very end, celebrity chefs became a thing. Just like it's the ultimate like epitome of like greed and pleasure.
For sure. The food, like decorating the food, eating these, like, dude, back in the day, like you had to go hunt for food, right? And now it's like perfectly prepared. Your nice meat platters. Like I see what you're saying. It's like,
it's the fact that it's thought of as a like a delicacy. And also you got to think like,
wow.
In what world, like honestly, the economic society that we've built, this is one thing that people don't even think about because like we're just born not to. Like, so in what world where we used to have like everybody hunting like together and like building, everyone living in the same house, like 5 children dying, right?
Yeah.
It used to take to support a family, you need like 20 people living together. And yet all the technological advancements, it used to be back in the 50s that one person could support a home, but somehow we have gone back in time that now 2 people need to work to support a home. And then now people are living back in with it. Like that is going backwards. And that is because all the wealth is being concentrated at the top. Housing is another point. People think of like houses go up in value because why? Why do houses go up in value? The reason why is that commercial banks can print money. And so whenever commercial banks lend money, they create new money. That is a creation of the money supply. So the reason why housing goes up in value is because it's a form of speculation now because of loans, mortgages. Mortgages and renting didn't used to be like a thing like 50 years ago. It's been ingrained on us. Everybody needs to own a home, take out this debt. And that causes the rise in the value of houses. In reality, like it is just where people are supposed to live. And that is all it is and all it has been throughout all of society. But now it is speculation and everything is just rampant speculation. And that's sort of the breakdown of an empire, that just everything just moves. It's just a grab of like, how much can we get at the top? And nobody cares anymore. And there's no politics. Like the fact that you should not have a society where you throw away tons and tons and tons of food, and yet you have people starving in the world. It seems
every day.
It seems so simple, like, and people think, well, no, it has to be that way because of what? It's the way our society functions, and that is because you have 2 forms of capitalism: neoclassical and classical capitalism. So neoclassical is like modern monetary theory. Like you don't need to have resources like backing anything. Like you can just print money, give it to banks, and let the free market reign. And so capitalism is, as a definition, free market with a small state, like small government, little government. And that is the definition of capitalism, except we don't have that anymore. We have this neoclassical version, which is basically a huge state and socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. And that is society now. You have the state the state is bigger than ever. Like everyone is saying like, oh yeah, capitalism, like, you know, but the state is more far reaching and more invasive than it ever has been in the past century. Yet we're told like we're such a capitalist society. Bail out the banks, bail out the rich. But if you screw up, you get nothing. It's literally like we live in a socialist society now. People just don't understand it yet, and people just don't accept it. It is socialism for the rich, socialism for the banks, because the state just does whatever they want with them, cushion them from everything, and capitalism for the poor. And this is it. It's just robbery. Yeah. In the UK, right? So we just had our taxes changed. So we used to pay 20% tax on income from 12.5 to £50,000 income tax. That's now been reduced. So we pay only 20% on 12.5 to 37 and 40% above that. And it used to be 40% above 50K. And why income tax, firstly, is unconstitutional in the US, and it was never part of capitalist thinking. never once income tax. Even I think it might be Adam Smith. Adam Smith.
Sounds familiar. Yeah, sounds right.
Like the father of capitalism. Was it Adam Smith?
I think it's Adam Smith. Yeah.
Smith capitalism. I think forefather of capitalism. Completely against income tax. Never mentioned it once, and everybody loves to talk about Adam Smith and quote him in like capitalist society. But I'm not against capitalism. People think if you're anti-capitalism, it means you're a communist. But I am very, very, very pro classical capitalism, which is small government, free market. But now we have big government, free market, and with big government, it just means that the government is the elite and the free market, the top of the elite. And so it's just feeding the elites, feeding the elites, and it's just classical breakdown of empires. It's to a T exactly what's happened before, and it's crumbling. It's just, it's going to fail, and it seems to be failing very, very quickly now, to be honest. It's just like so sad to watch.
Yeah, this is wild. And the truth says, I remember Adam Smith. We learned about that I remember hearing Adam Smith, 8th grade geography. I remember, no, I think it was 9th grade. My teacher, Mr. whatever his name was. But anyways, I know Adam Smith. So much to unpack here. And one thing I also want to mention in the age of decadence, and I heard this in the Joe Rogan podcast, I don't know if it's true, but he was talking about how when you start to get obsessed with gender as well, that's a sign that empires are failing. I don't know if you read that, but like right now in America, I mean, I don't know if it's all over the world, but we are so obsessed with gender. And that's how you know that things are too good, right? The age of decadence that you talked about, when you're able to obsess over gender, right? And I'm for whatever people want to be. If you want to be, trans, be trans. If you're gay, you're gay. If you're bi, you're bi. It doesn't affect me, but it's the obsession of it, right? And we really are seeing that in America today because things are so good. Back in the stage 1, 2, or 3, you didn't have time to say, oh, I'm going to be a man or a female. You're trying to survive on a daily basis, right? So things are so good that we're having that obsession. Did you see that when you were reading about this?
This is what I mentioned about like when everybody is so miserable and everybody knows that like the future is so awful and that it can't get any better, that you have to create these realities for yourself. It's like the massive increase in antidepressants, like everybody seeking like pleasure in food and the rise of celebrity chefs. And it's like, if I can change this aspect, I will be happy. It's not, and everyone's thinking that is the solution when it's not. The solution is the complete breakdown of like society and a change at the fundamental level of like economics and like sociological change. That's what's needed, because there's no integrity anymore. Like there's no we're just a society of like takers and like fighting for ourselves and selfishness, and just all we want is to just feel good. Like we're so obsessed about our individual that we give no shits about like collective action anymore, which is why everybody's given up on politics. Like nobody gives a shit. Everyone thinks, oh, just let them get on with it. Because everybody knows what they're doing. They're just exploiting us and they're just stealing from us. And we just think, you know what? They've done it forever. Get on with it. And this just feeds this loop and cycle of just like them stealing from us. And people just accept it now. And that's why I don't think we're going to see like the same sort of revolutions we used to. Maybe in France where they still have some sort of like backbone. But here in the UK, like honestly, like if you would say to someone 50 years ago, there's going to be, well, I think about this when I see Rishi Sunak, our prime minister, providing depleted uranium shells to the tanks they're sending to Ukraine. Like depleted uranium is 75% of the strength of non-depleted uranium. And they use it in like shells because it's very heavy. It's a very heavy metal. And it means it can pierce armor better, but it's against like the UN Charter. It's led to like malformed children in Kosovo, malformed children in Iraq where it was used. Jeez. And we're sending that, even though Putin has said we will consider the use of depleted uranium as use of a dirty bomb. And bear in mind, they have this ammunition and they are not using it in Ukraine. And we just go and send that stuff to Ukraine as if we're this tiny little island. And like the people are just what we just accept that our leaders send. Russia's massive. Like it's like probably like 1,000 times the size of England. And our prime minister just sends nuclear weapons effectively that Russia said they'll see it as a nuclear bomb if it's used. And why are we poking that there? Like, who voted for that? Like, for us to just pick a fight with Putin because of what? We're supporting, like, Ukraine. Like, the people do not give a shit. But again, we just let them get on with it because we don't care anymore. And even though we know full well that if we went into war against Russia, we would get obliterated within 2 minutes, we just don't care. The people do not give a shit. And so no one even says anything.
Crazy.
No one goes into the street. Nobody cares because we know that it's useless because the system is broken. And that is a problem. There's no collective action. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is the fall of the empire because nobody cares anymore. Everyone knows it's over.
Themselves. It's scary, but it's, every single empire ever has fallen, right? And every single fiat currency ever has fallen. Like we're no different. It's going to happen, right? Like at one point it's going to happen. Question for you though. There's never been, at least in my knowledge, and maybe there has been, but there's never been a world currency that's not owned by governmental powers like Bitcoin, right? Like cryptocurrency. Do you think that this could be the currency that changes it all? Do you think at some point that Bitcoin, let's just use Bitcoin for example, right? Because there's so many different coins out there, but let's just use Bitcoin for this. Do you ever think that there will be a point where some of these major currencies fall and Bitcoin will be the one that stands forever?
Well, you say that there hasn't ever been, but there has. Gold and silver.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So so tell us the story of gold and silver. It's like, when did these start? Why were they so valuable? And they still hold their value today.
Well, with gold and silver, they are obviously, technically they are unlimited supply because as like the world churns around and like magma flows up from the things, then it like solidifies, and then there's like gold in like these like old magma veins, etc. So technically it's unlimited supply because the world constantly churns it out naturally. But essentially, because it is something you need to dig out of the ground, it is something that people find of tangible value. Throughout like 4,000 years of human society or more, it has been a means of exchange between nations because everybody holds it to a standard. And so that is why gold and silver has always been used to back, because funnily enough, the amount of gold that we take out of the ground each year is like 1.8%. Like it's roughly the same as like the population growth of the world. And so silver is a bit different in the fact that it does have actual real world utility. Like think about it like crypto, like silver is used in solar panels and it's used in a lot of renewable energy stuff. But gold and silver are just always have been used when all else fails. When a proper shit hit the fan scenario happens, throughout all of human history, people have traded gold and silver and fallen back to gold and silver. And so that's why I would love for Bitcoin to take up that mantle. But if the whole world goes to shit, I know that my gold and silver will do me better than Bitcoin at present. And that we get to, we're in like, the internet and like the information age. But like, if we have a nuclear apocalypse, like will Bitcoin, like, will we be able to transact with that? Very unlikely. We can be EMP'd, we can have everything else. Like, it's just not, it's still not tangible enough yet in terms of like everyone transacting with it, acceptance and real world adoption. I think that Bitcoin was born in 2008. In 2008 and like 2008 to 2013, 2012, maybe even 2011, like you had this revolutionary like cycle where you had the Arab Spring and you had some other revolutions where authoritarian dictators were gotten rid of, but people need to get mad for that to happen, like real angry. And people only get angry. It's like it's what sparked like the decade of terrorism between 2010 to 2020. Nobody wakes up as a kid and thinks, I'm going to grow up and be a terrorist. Terrorists there's always a few psychos who are willing to like instruct them, but they're born out of desperation. They're born out of like suffering, anger. Like if they wanted to, they would much rather be working at like their old like farm somewhere. This is a massive stereotype, but some farm somewhere out in Afghanistan than blowing themselves up in the middle of like a square. Like no one's going to pick that option, but you have this desperation that's born from like suffering, and we haven't suffered as like a society since the banks collapsed. And when they did, we had the Arab Spring, we had the like sit-ins, what was it called? Occupy movement, which broke down because they didn't have like a solution after the thing. But you need to have that desperation because that's what feeds into revolution and change. And unfortunately, the new way of dealing with everything is just to print money, taper over the cracks, and just hope people forget about it. And I think the Bitcoin will get massive adoption after they finally capitulate. It's just they keep on pushing it back and making it worse and making it worse and making it worse. So once that finally happens and everything goes to shit, including Bitcoin, it will go to shit. But I think it will rise from the ashes really well, as long as we don't get nuked.
Crazy. This is it's like, it's so hard to comprehend, but I think you're right. And a lot of people, like, I see it on Twitter and whatever, they hate on you. They're like, he's so bearish. But it's like, I think you're trying to be realistic, right? Because I think a lot of people don't even want to think about this as an option. No one wants to think about the currencies going to zero and wars happening and, empires falling. Like no one wants to think about that. We all I think it's probably something in our psychology where you want to be optimistic, right? You want to be positive.
It's normalcy bias.
Yes.
And arguably, like we're undergoing it now, but it's a real, like, I'll get the definition up here. Normalcy bias. It's displayed usually in like natural disasters. So normalcy bias is a psychological phenomenon in which people have a tendency to underestimate the likelihood or impact of a disaster or other crisis. This bias can lead people to make inadequate or inappropriate preparations for a crisis, or to underestimate the severity of the situation. And 80% of humans display this in the crisis.
Wow.
Because it's the age-old adage, and I constantly tweet it. Whenever I share data that's always had 100% success rate, I say, unless this time is different, because every single time throughout all of human history, throughout every financial crisis in history, they've said, well, this time is different. I bear in mind the thing that I mentioned before, no bear market in history has ever bottomed before the VIX has hit 45. It's only been as high as 32. So if the bear market is over, then this time is different. The 2/10 year yield curve inversion has predicted 8 out of 8 recessions in world history. It's the most inverted it's ever been since the 80s. But we're not going to have a recession this time. This time is different. This time is never different. All of these indicators have a 100% track record, and we are
Crazy.
just arrogant and dumb enough to believe that this time we have learned. That is the problem. We think we are too clever. We think that we have solved economics, which is like a pseudoscience that doesn't even exist. And yeah, it's never different. And if you think this time is different, it's time to sell whatever you're like thinking of.
So how, like, look, we can't give advice to other people, but as a friend, you can talk to me. Like, how could I protect myself, or what are you personally doing during this time? Are you loading up on silver and gold? Are you, I mean, obviously you're shorting the markets a little bit. I mean, are you buying cryptocurrency this time? Are you just shorting? Like, what are you doing to protect yourself? And obviously not everybody's going to be shorting markets and stuff, but like for a simple person that buys and sells Bitcoin, like, are you buying now? Are you waiting? What are you doing?
Certainly not buying at these levels. I would love to live in this like world where Bitcoin has already taken up the mantle as this amazing, hedge.
Yeah.
I think that, and I mentioned this before, what you've seen, funnily enough, I saw a headline come up on Bloomberg that Fed futures are again pricing in a hike for the next meeting. They had priced it out. And funnily enough, as I mentioned before, the small caps were really massively underperforming the NASDAQ, and the NASDAQ had been doing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And Bitcoin is the most correlated to the NASDAQ, and it's been performing brilliant all year. Now it's flipped. So if I look at the small cap index, it's up 0.6% today. And if I look at the NASDAQ, it's down 1.1%. And that is because people have realized that inflation isn't going away, especially when you've got Israel absolutely going nuts at the moment.
What are they doing?
It's literally like Netanyahu, who's always been like very far right. He sacked his defense minister, and the army went on strike. That's when it's a big red flag, when the army starts like getting stuff. Basically, he put in this, the judicial reform, and effectively just so he's under investigation for corruption, and this reform would basically make like him get away with it. So he's trying to do this stuff to basically just get away with like being corrupt, and so. Everyone was protesting due to this, and then the defense minister supported the protest, and he sacked his defense minister, and then the army went on strike. And so once the army starts going on strike, then you need to start worrying about like a coup, because if the army takes a side and they've got all the weapons, then you need to start. So he's basically said, okay, fine, we won't do it. But yeah, it's like on a knife's edge. You've got Armenia and Azerbaijan literally about to fight again over this like Karabakh region, which they're always going at each other over. You've got Iran sending weapons to the border of Azerbaijan because they can't stand them. And Israel obviously keeps on bombing Iran, and then the US was bombing Iran. Iran bombed the US bases back. It's just like, it's a powder keg right now in the Middle East, and people don't even know about it. Like, how many people even knew Azerbaijan was a country? Like, not. I mean, yeah, some people might, but these sort of conflicts just fly under the radar because nobody cares until they're told to.
And they distract us, bro, with like what's happening with the Oscars and the Emmys, like you said, like celebrities. Like they distract us with stuff that is meaningless, and all of this stuff flies under the radar.
Well, that's the rise of gladiator pits towards the end of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Bloodthirsty sport. We love that. And that's the thing with reality TV as well. Like, that is just a sign of a decaying empire, that we are like chucked into the lives of people we don't know and don't care about, and we are obsessed with. And it's just it's all classic. Like, study the history of empires. Just Google it and just look at every single one and compare it to today, and then think, is this time different? Never different.
Exactly. I mean, if the Roman Empire could fall, right, like the largest, most powerful army ever fell, then like anything can fall. And you're right. It's like, it feels like this slippery slope, but these are supposed to be the best times to live in, right? Like, imagine.
Well, it's the age of decadence.
Exactly.
It's but the age of decadence isn't. It's not because we've lost all like integrity, and this is the age where the elites are plundering and getting out and, like, you know, setting the stage and distracting us with all of our like all of these like materialistic like short-term pleasures. That's the age that we're currently in, like short-term materialistic pleasures, whilst resources and things that actually matter are just pulled, just taken out. Why do you think every central bank in the world is hoarding gold right now? The biggest buyer of gold last year and this year is central banks. And they're not buying it for no reason. They're buying it because it's the resource, and they know full well every fiat currency in history has gone. Bread and circuses, exactly. Every single fiat currency in history has gone to zero. Every single one. And we are arrogant and dumb enough to think that we have solved all of human history. We know economics now, and arrogant enough to think that if we debase our currency and take it off of a standard, like that is the cure. Like we have We used to have it backed by something. Now it's backed by nothing. And yet we think that we've solved like the rise and fall of empires and like economics. Like, honestly, we are the dumbest humans. Just we haven't changed whatsoever. Just everybody is just blind. But it's normalcy bias. Like, the thing is, the Roman Empire, there was no like, front page news like, guys, the Roman Empire has fallen. It took hundreds of years. People retrospectively pinpoint it. The empire, for all like chances, the empire has already fallen. In the future, when they look back on this, they might easily say the Iraq War marked it, or in fact, the thing that I mentioned about the weaponization of the dollar against Russia, that was it. That was what happened. Like, we're living through the collapse of an empire right now. We just can't pinpoint exactly what they'll say that was the moment. But likelihood is it's something that is happening right now. It's highly likely to be the Ukraine-Russia war.
This shit is crazy, dude. It's like, it's wild. And the thing is, so a question. So you keep saying like the empire. You live in England. I live in America. Is the empire? Is it all of us? Is it just America? Is it China? Is it Russia? It's like, what do you consider the empire to be?
So it's the current. I'd say the current way of life it affects everybody. So it's this idea. The US and the EU, sort of the collective West, we love this idea that everyone can live in harmony together. In reality, the US constantly exploits its allies. Blew up Nord Stream pipeline. We have this fake idea of the world, the rules-based order, and the collective West's morals. In reality, we bomb children 24/7. We just don't talk about it and just exploit other countries. But this idea that everyone can live peacefully, it just isn't. It's talked about, but it's not actually actioned. We don't actually want to have peace with China. We don't want China to be an equal partner to the EU and the US. That's the whole reason why else is the US like sanctioning their technologies? What is wrong in reality with China being an equal to the US? People say human rights, but like, the US has started like 70 wars in 50 years and China none. So that's a lie. Like, people are saying we're fighting authoritarianism. That's just a lie. There's no reason why we can't allow all of these countries to become equal. The only reason why is that the world is run by the elites, and currently the elites are the Western elites. And they don't want to lose their power to Asia. And it's just this, again, everyone's just given up on it. And nobody cares about it, like, from the normal person, because we just let them get on with it. Like, but eventually they're going to end up nuking each other and killing all of us. And we've just let it slide because we just don't want to be involved. And why would we? It's depressing as anything. Like, I get depressed, like, even talking about this. Everyone watching this is probably depressed. And nobody wants to hear it because it's so awful. We're talking about the end of, like, nobody knows what comes next. Like, it's just the end of everything we've ever known. And it could be as apocalyptic as, like, everyone gets nuked, or it could be as, like, long and protracted as just the slow, gradual breakdown of, the East rising and the West going on. But if there's anything that, again, this time is different, empires do not just give up their fight peacefully and just die into the distance. Like, it's normally brutal. So yeah, we'll see if this time is different.
Yeah, and the thing too is now we have nukes. Back then, the Roman Empire didn't have nukes. I don't even know if they had guns, right? Like, who knows?
Yeah, it's like, it's like humans. We're inevitably, like, we're the most schizophrenic animal. Like, we want peace and we're capable of, like, such kindness to each other, but we'll also invent, like, new ways to incinerate each other as well, because why not? We might as well build stuff that kills each other whilst we're, saving each other and giving charity. It makes like no sense. And it's so simple to think, well, why don't why don't we just stop building stuff that's new ways to kill each other, but even like more powerful than the next? Well, we won't do that because then they won't do that, and then we don't like. If we like, I think there's this guy called I think it was Jacques Frazier. I think he's dead now, but he was French and American. But it's like he said once, like, we're such a sick, abominable society that we won't make the history books. They'll look back at society as it is now, large nations invading small nations, taking resources, killing each other, and they will just think of history as history up until the civilized world, because we are not yet in the civilized world. Like, they'll look back at like, oh, so Russia invaded Ukraine because the US was putting nuclear weapons because they wanted to have a first strike capability. Like, what is civilized about the world we live in now, where we're still killing each other just to steal resources, taking oil? Like, history will look back at us the same they look back as the Roman Empire, and the same as they look back at barbarians just invading each other. Like, and it's true, we won't make the history books. They'll think of uncivilized society, and then they'll say civilized society started somewhere around here, and it's in the future. It's not with us, because we're still just barbarians killing each other.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I pulled up right here. This is like a list of empires. I think you're comfortable talking about it because the British Empire was the largest, right, in history. So the list of largest empires, the British Empire, maximum land area, they had 35.5 million kilometers. They owned 26% of the world in 1920s. And obviously today it's like the British Empire is not as strong as it once was. You can see the Mongol Empire, the Russian Empire, the Qing Dynasty, Spanish Empire, and most of these have fallen or at least lost power, right? You know, you look at Spain, think about Portugal. Portugal was a powerhouse back, like they conquered Brazil, right? Spain conquered most of South America.
This is it. Like the reason again why the British Empire fell, overextended military. We went everywhere. We owned so much of the world, tiny island, like we just didn't have. And it's the same with the US. Like, how many more bases? Like, you've got like Guam, you've got like, you want Taiwan, like Philippines just signed a US base there. You've got tons in Syria. Like, how far extended is that military? And then you've got, lavish like wealth and like exporting all of these like spices. People used to have in old paintings from like the 1900s, late 1800s. You'll look at them and there'll be a pineapple in them, just a random pineapple in all of these paintings. And that's because pineapples were seen as this status symbol of wealth. If you had a globe and a pineapple, it would show that you're a well-to-do person. You can afford a pineapple. And like, that's like this decadence of just like, you got pineapple in your painting. Like, what is the point? Like, it's like buying like a gold-plated Lamborghini now. Like, you got pineapple in your painting.
Or just a Lamborghini. You know, it's like, why do you need a Lamborghini? Like a nice Toyota can get you around. It's like we're living in this age of extravagance, right? And we reached it when people are buying stuff just to show it off, right? Like, people are buying stuff just to post it to show people that they can buy stuff. Like that, like, we are living in this age of decadence. And you're right. On that note, though, look, obviously you don't know. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 1,000 years. But like, what's your timeline prediction? Like, or I guess let's just use facts. Like, how long does the age of decadence tend to last based on history?
It varies. I mean, it's the last of the six. Like, empires tend to last 200 years. And of the 6 stages, of which the age of decadence is the last one. So by that maths, 200 divided by 6 would be like 30 to 40 years. Arguably, this age of decadence started after the 2000s, maybe, I'd say. Well, here's another interesting point about this is that, so capitalism, classical capitalism versus neoclassical. So what you used to have up until the fall of the Soviet Empire, you used to have a fight of capitalism versus communism. And so communism didn't want to reveal its weaknesses. So they hid it all. There was like a saying in communist society of like, just you can't believe anything that's said because it's all a lie, because they were trying to hide everything from the people. Any weakness just was overlooked, which is why Chernobyl happened. Chernobyl, right? So the reason why you had like Fukushima plant wasn't as bad as Chernobyl, or all these other nuclear disasters like 3 Mile Island weren't as bad as Chernobyl, was that with Chernobyl, they didn't build a containment vessel for the nuclear reactor, because having a containment vessel was an admission that something could go wrong. So like that's like the stupidity of the Soviets. Like, just if you build something, a safety precaution, it's admitting that something could go wrong, and they wouldn't admit that their nuclear reactors could ever go wrong. So that's why Chernobyl happened, which is again like just so dumb, like showing the collapse of an empire. But you had capitalism as well, which like just because capitalism won against communism, it doesn't mean that it's good. It just means it's not as bad. And so before, you had capitalism also not wanting to show its weaknesses. So up until the collapse of the Soviet Empire, governments and banks, they wouldn't print the same amount of money. Look at the supply of money from like 1980 to current day.
Crazy.
It's gone insane. Like before that, we had classical capitalism where we were restrained. We were still like, having this debt-based monetary system, but you didn't have this absolute crazy printing of money and issuing of like debt, because everyone thought, oh great, communism's gone, capitalism works, let's go nuts. Like classical capitalism works. Neoclassical, this idea of just printing money and just that modern monetary theory, that does not work, and that's going to be the collapse of the empire.
Wow, it's it's wild. And I think Cajun Crypto is right. He said people's priorities are backwards, right? They really are. I know a lot of friends that are struggling to get by, and I actually want to talk about this in a second because there was something that I'll bring up. But a lot of friends that are struggling to get by, and they're buying Gucci and Louis Vuitton, and like people's priorities are backwards. What are your thoughts on taxes? Because you mentioned they're pretty criminal, but Watcher Guru put out a post, and I lived in San Francisco where taxes are probably the highest in the world. But in New York, if you make $100,000 a year, you're leaving with $36,000 after taxes, rental income, food, etc. Right? $36,000. I mean, what's your take on why it's so hard to survive and make money and to just even exist in this modern day world?
Because again, it's socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. We pay the bill for the elites to get bailed out. Like when they say, oh no, these aren't bailouts where they're giving it to the banks. Like the problem is that when money is issued, it's issued as debt. So the argument of trickle-down economics, it's also called the horse and oats theory. And this is the reason why they don't call it the horse and oats theory, is because it just shows everybody exactly what it is. So the horse and oats theory is that if you feed the horse will eat the oats, and it will shit them out on the road as it goes. And then the birds eat the oats from the shit. And that's trickle-down economics. People don't call it the horse and oats theory anymore, because in reality, it shows the poor people eat the shit of the rich, because that's what happens. And that's trickle-down economics. By the time the money reaches the poor people, it's already been exploited, and the prices have already gone up, because it goes to the capitalists who then employ the workers. And by the time the workers spend the money, the banks have already like lent the money to buy properties, and the properties go up in value. The person is paid, and then they go to buy the property, but it's already gone up in value. So in reality, you just have socialism for the rich, all the benefits for the rich, capitalism for the poor. And that's why it's so hard nowadays, because they're trying. It's like they reducing the when our 40% tax starts in the UK, it now starts at 37k. It used to be 50. We are paying for the monumental screw ups of the politicians when whoever that prime minister was that we had for 30 days that didn't outlast that lettuce. We're paying for their mistakes. They screwed the bond market, and they caused the Bank of England to start QE again, to save the pension funds that were going to collapse because of the massive spike in sell-off of bonds, right? So now the Treasury, so the money that's collected from us as the people, has to pay the central bank back for that QE. So we are paying for the mistakes of our politicians, and nobody even understands it. So nobody protests it because nobody cares anymore. Like, it's the biggest theft in history. Like, we are being absolutely screwed. And yeah, horse and oats theory. You know, the horse gets fed all the oats, and then we eat the horse's shit on the floor, and we get fed that way. And it's trickle down economics. It doesn't work, and we end up eating shit.
It's distraction too, right? And it's like people don't understand that. You know, people don't understand the QE and what you just mentioned. It's like, and then they're distracted by Netflix and this and that. And look what happened with Kim Kardashian. Who's she dating? It's like, it's all a distraction, man. It really is. And it's like, we are getting screwed. I 100% agree.
Somebody said something 15 minutes ago. You mentioned a yield curve inversion. Campbell Harvey that originally made the observation claim this time is different, and that its indicator will be wrong this time. Made the original.
So Harvey that made the original observation claims this time is different about that. His indicator will be wrong this time.
I mean, it's not his indicator. It's, if you look back at the yield curve inversion throughout since the 20s, it's front run 8 out of 8 recessions. So it's nobody's indicator. It's just the indicator. So there's a couple of different yield curve inversions. So there's the 3-month versus 10-year, and then there's 2-year versus 10-year. The 2-year versus 10-year has been right 8 out of 8 times. I think the 3-month versus 10-year has been right 8 out of 9 times, something like that. But yeah, it's not going to be different. Like, the Fed has just shown that it is incapable of fixing it, because it's like I've been saying for like months and months that the Fed needs to get it over with, because the fact is that they just don't allow for any pain whatsoever. The stock market sells off by 100 basis points, and they just get like a Fed speaker out to talk bullishly to rally it. One bank, like the 16th largest bank, collapses, they just bail it out. Just, there's an absolute inability of the Fed to accept any pain, and that causes massive inflation because they keep printing money to solve every problem, and it's just going to get worse and worse. So I've lost, and bear in mind that the fiat, something interesting. So in Latin for credit in Latin is something like Latin credit meaning. This was like something funny that I saw before. Creditum, which means that which is entrusted. So credit basically means trusted. And fiat in Latin means let it be so. Because it's just like it's all based on it's a trust and faith. Like, there's nothing that backs it. Like, the only thing that gives currencies value in a fiat-based system is trust, like humans' faith, which is why let it be so. As in, like, once you get rid of like the credit and the trust, it's just like it's down to humans, and you can't trust humans. Like, we constantly get things wrong, and let it be so.
Crazy. It's and this is this episode we really talked a little bit of crypto. We talked about CZ Binance, but I like these types of conversations. I think they're important to have, just so you think about it, right? Because a lot of us go through life right now thinking that everything's so great and everything's going to be fine, and like we're worried and we're distracted and we're worried about the wrong issues, essentially. So I really like these conversations. I hope we have more of them. Let's talk about VEMP. A few more things before we wrap it up. VEMP, always want to give a chance to give some updates on VEMP Studios. Obviously, the rebranding, the games are coming. What's the latest with VEMP Studios?
We're having some very good conversations, especially on the game side. We're in just the middle of this slightly frustrating period where we've got the games on the edge of coming, at least 3 of them. Hopefully it's April next month. So we're hoping by May we'll be able to deliver all 3 of these. And then we're going to be increasing the utility of them, because bear in mind that the games that we have taken over, they used to be enough to have their own tokens. So, for example, this Penguin Carts game that we've taken over, that used to have its own token, but we took over the game and the asset. So we're adding just like a whole extra game tokens utility on top of our existing utility from Penguin Cards. And then we got our own game, Warring Tribes. We took that over from a game developer. They didn't even make it to launch their token in the market before they went under. So that one was going to have 2 tokens. So that's like 2 whole protocols worth of utility and reason to like purchase a token added on top of what we already have with our existing protocols. So we're in the bit of a like, just waiting for that at the moment. But yeah, I am very bullish, loading up a lot and buying a lot.
It's a tough time to be a developer though. It's like, because especially when you're seeing these things, right? And you're like, hey, I mean, if you release your games right now in these utilities, does it do much for VEMP, the investors, the ecosystem, as if the market turns around, right? It's like, so timing is of the essence, for a developer and when to launch these things as well, right?
That's one thing that you have to bear in mind. Annoyingly, like, full well that at the moment there aren't a lot of eyes on crypto, and that if you were to delay, then you can launch at a time where you do have more eyes. But again, I'm conscious that there's, when does that good time come?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of bad news as we've seen.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of stuff. So anyways, that's the latest with VEMP. Once again, guys, I mean, look, I enjoy these episodes. This is like the stuff that like fascinates me, because there's not much to talk about in crypto. Let's see if there's any updates from CZ or Watcher Guru before we wrap it up. And actually, I do want to get your thoughts on number 4. I do want to get your thoughts on Michael Saylor too, because he bought a shitload of Bitcoin. Any updates from Watcher Guru? No updates here, guys. But we did see the CFTC sue Binance and sue CZ Binance. Zhao is his last name. No updates here. Last thing before we wrap it up, Dom. And guys, thank you everybody for joining the stream. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Shout out to Crypto Surfer. Shout out to Stevie Crypto. Microstrategy now holds 138. Almost 139,000 Bitcoin, worth 3.87 billion, and they bought an additional 6,500 Bitcoin today, $150 million worth.
I think they bought it earlier because I think they bought it at like a. Actually, I mean, they could have bought it today, but I think maybe because I saw a price of like 23,000 and something, but
okay,
maybe
so
that's
it wasn't today. Yeah, it was not today.
It could have been, but because maybe that was the average price. But something I saw was like either their average price is like 23,000 something, or they bought it over like, because you got to remember it was only 2 weeks ago that we were at those levels.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm not sure if it was today or not. But yeah, I mean, usually. Yeah, it's not usually a good sign, to be honest.
When he buys?
No, like as in he hasn't historically, like it's never really a good. I mean, he's been offside for like most of the past year. Let's bear in mind. It depends when he bought, but yeah, I mean, there's like a saying, and I see it tweeted a lot. Like, just wait for Michael Saylor to tweet, and then we'll be at the top.
That's not good. That's not good because he just bought at these levels. So obviously not a bullish sign here. The latest with CZ. He tweets out number 4, which means ignore FUD, fake news, attacks, etc. I mean, getting sued by the CFTC is not fake news, right? It's like it is an attack. It is an attack, but like fake news, I don't know. You just got sued by the CFTC.
It's not FUD. Like, if FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, like the fear is that you're getting sued. The uncertainty is like, how bad will you get sued, and will you go to prison? And the doubt is whether you will be still around in like 2 years. Like, it is FUD, but it's entirely like reasonable to be concerned about that.
Yes,
especially if you've got assets on Binance US, Binance International. Not really. Like, it's not going to have too much of an effect. But if you're on Binance US, yeah, I would certainly
get it off. I mean, if you have your assets on any exchange, I would get it off, right? But obviously Binance, obviously FTX US, Binance US, get it off of these. But the number one exchange in the world, if they go down, and let's end with this question. Shout out to Big James, shout out to Philip. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Cajun Crypto, we love you guys. Burn by Saitama, thank you guys. Let me end with this question, Dom. If Binance goes down, do we all go down? Is it over?
No, because you got to remember, like when Mt. Gox, which was like the original crypto exchange in 2013, got hacked, it was doing 90% of all Bitcoin volumes.
Wow.
And we came back from that. Obviously, it was a lot earlier in the cycle. But yeah, like a lot of people put weight on exchanges and like needing them. And you don't necessarily like, we've come back from worse. Like FTX was a big old deal, and look at us now. I don't think that it would, I mean, it would certainly be like real bad, and it would have huge knock-on effects.
True.
But we've come back from worse. Like Mt. Gox was like the only exchange at the time that it existed. So yeah, we've come back from worse.
I love it. Well, there's your answer here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the show. That was honestly one of my favorite shows we've done. Although it was less crypto talk.
Probably one of the most depressing ones too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel that bad. It's stuff that like people need to hear, at least like put in their heads, because right now we live in this fantasy world of like like I said, Kim Kardashian and what's happening with Justin Bieber, and it's like, you know, these things, like history repeats itself. That's a scary thing, and I always say that every empire has fallen, every fiat currency has fallen. So it's like it probably means that every empire will continue to fall in every fiat currency.
Unless this time is different, of course.
I like that. And unless we adopt Bitcoin, which we need to hear, guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Monday, guys. Make sure to follow Dominic VEMP on Twitter, follow VEMP Studios, and I'll be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. PST. We'll see you guys then. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everybody.